Yeah. Listen to this. I've been waiting all day to get to y'all. I got here this morning because I wanted to take one step forward early, and we're going to do it today. Real quick, I'd like to start my sessions with energy. So if you're feeling me, I need you to answer this question. If you're alive right now, let me hear you say, I. It's amazing. No matter what stages I grace, no matter what place I go, when I ask that question, everybody gives a unified approach because we're all here together. Well, I am Chris McPherson, and I'm pleased to be here with you today. You could have been anywhere in the world, and you decided to be right here, and that is a great thing. For a moment, I want to borrow your attention, and I want you to engage in me in a journey of imagination. And I simply want you to imagine a world where anything is possible. I mean, really anything. Anything that you could fathom in your mind, that it could become true in your reality. Because the reality of the world that we live in is that we are in a place where anything can, does, and will happen. So, the doctor comes into the room, shuts the door behind him, pulls out one of those rolling stools, sits down in it, and begins to pad across the floor on the heels of his feet. He gets to the edge of the bed, and that's where he greets my mother. And he says, well, Miss McPherson, we've ran all the tests, and let me be the first to congratulate you as you are pregnant with child. She said, Doctor, pregnant? No way. He slightly looked over the top of his glasses. Oh, yes, Miss McPherson, you're pregnant. She said, Doctor, you have got to be kidding. He looked over his glasses again and said, no, ma'am, Miss McPherson, this is not a joking matter. You will have a child in 6 months. She said, Doctor, I am 41 years old. How could something like this happen? At this point, he took off his glasses, looked her dead in the eye, and said, now listen, if you don't know how this happened, I sure can't be the one to tell you. You see, the news of a childbirth is not something that should be surprising for a woman of any age, let alone 41 years like my mother. But she truly understood the realm of all possibilities that day with the news that there was a child in her womb. You see, early on in my parents' marriage, they had 7 children in 5 years. And faced with the demands of 7 mouths to feed and a single household income, my mother entered into a form of permanent birth control, believing that she would never have another child in her womb. I was born on July 22nd, later that same year. And since my birth, I've always been associated with what is conceived as the impossible. Now slow down for me. Think about it. 16 years is a long time. I'm talking about 16 years of Valentine's Days, 16 years of happy birthday. Hey, 16 years of Halloween, trick or treat. But the reality was that anything truly can happen. And I've followed this my whole life. But see, this is my story. I tell that with you, you get it. But you guys see this all the time. Any of you familiar with this? These slogans touted, it's right in front of you. They say kills 99.9% of bacteria and germs. You ever think about why they never say 100? It's because they can't. There's that one badass germ that just won't die. Yeah, it's not giving up without a fight. And what's unique about this is less than a whole. We're human. We represent whole in ourselves. And sometimes we don't believe that we're enough. But if 0.001 is enough, then maybe you should start looking at yourselves a little differently. You see, and I carry this conviction with me every day of my life. I work in the field of personal and professional development, and I work to help people remember the impossible of what they can achieve if they give themselves the slim opportunity of it becoming real. So in one of my training sessions, we were vibing, everybody was open, it was good, and I was met with a question from the audience. And the question stated, who invented impossible? And as soon as I heard it, I was kind of taken back. So the only thing I could do was bring the question forward. I said, hey, there was a question in the back for the people up front. We were asked who invented impossible. And really all I was doing was stalling. You see, this is a tactic that I learned when I was a kid. The best way to give yourself time to think of an answer is to restate the question. You know, I used to do this when things would fall or break in my room. It'd be a crash, boom. My dad would say, what's going on in there? what's going on in here? Nothing, which happens to be the universal answer for something is definitely going on in here. But at least it would give me the opportunity to possibly put things back in place, or, if it was broken, sweep things under the rug. But you see, we had hardwood floors, so I was never able to sweep anything under the rug. And I realized in the positioning of this question, I couldn't sweep this away either. So I did the only thing that I felt that I could do, and I told the truth. I said, you know what? I don't know who invented impossible. You see, I don't know is never the final destination for us. It can't be. It should be the beginning of our journey to discover whatever it is that we want. And what I did know is that we were approaching our lunch break for the day. So what I said to the group was, hey, if you'll give me time, I will work over the lunch break, and I will work to develop an adequate answer to the question, who invented impossible? They all agreed. We broke. They were off to lunch, and I had an hour to save face and figure this whole thing out. So I went to the most credible source I could possibly think of, Google. And I typed in, who invented impossible? And to my surprise, nothing came back. But you guys know the intuition that Google is programmed with, so it'll give you suggestions. It gave me suggestions for the definition of the word possible. It gave me something called an impossible burger. It even began to talk about things such as impossible objects. So I said, hey, let's go down this journey. So impossible, defined as not able to occur, exist, or be done. That's what this word means. The important thing about understanding the word of impossible, it's an adjective. Now, you guys know from grammar school that adjectives describe nouns. Nouns themselves are commonly known as people, places, or things. So in the example of a noun, a ball would be a noun. It is a thing. And then the adjective for ball could be yellow ball, blue ball, brown ball, big ball, small ball, because they describe the ball. Well, possible is an adjective itself. Also in Google, it tells you the use of the word over a certain amount of time. If you look over the last 210 years, you'll see the word impossible actually begins to decrease over time. Now, in Google fashion, they say, hey, if you love impossible, you probably want to define possible. So I did. Possible, able to occur or exist within the capacity of someone or something. Again, another adverb. And if you look at the use and mentions over time, you'll see that the charts almost mirror each other in an inverse, because it seems that impossibility decreases where possibility increases. All good, I know the definitions now, but that's not where I wanted to go. So it gave me this, the Impossible Burger, made by Impossible Foods, a company that was founded just up the road from where we are today. They specialize in plant-based proteins, meat and dairy substitutes that come from plants. Impossible Burger, right? Looks tender and juicy. Listen, especially since I was skipping lunch to research this topic, I was starving. But this wasn't the impossible that I was looking for. Continue to go further. I got to this, an impossible object, also known as the Penrose Triangle. Some of you are familiar with this. Every time you go to Google Docs, you click on this to get to where you're going. But the reason this is called an impossible object is because it is a two-dimensional image that gives the subconscious appearance of being three-dimensional. The brain figures it out. It knows that it can't possibly be 3D, but it gives you the perception that it is. All good, I get it, great. But time had expired, and I didn't find myself any closer to who invented impossible. I was starting to get frustrated, and at that point, I realized something that I had always held with me. You know, instead of looking outward to understand the definition of what someone else has, maybe I would invert it for myself. And instead of looking outward for impossible, I would look internal to what I already knew about the realm of possibilities. You know, I've heard it stated that the most powerful thing in the world is an idea, and it is our ability to act upon those ideas that creates our world every single day. You see, from the beginning of time, humans have always had to establish our seniority in the world, our superiority, in creating the realm around us. Listen, you consider structures such as the pyramids. These things are ancient. We don't necessarily know how they use technology to create those without the machinery and technology that we have today. Consider Olmec statues that are found on multiple continents. Yet we don't know how they would have been able to get there without shipping being available at the time. These things weigh thousands of pounds. How could they be moved to different places? Not only that, Stonehenge is there's impossible right there, you see? Anything can happen. Boom, Stonehenge. You see, the great example of what is this? And we understand exactly why they created it, but this thing is dated 3,000 years ago. So how did they create a structure that is still available to be around today? So we don't have to understand exactly how they did it or why they did it to know that it's possible. In fact, understand that anything that's ever been created was the cutting edge of technology at that time. But you had to live in that time to understand exactly what it was. This would be the same equivalent of you trying to explain to someone who lived 200 years ago exactly what your cell phone is. And no matter how you tried to explain an AirDrop and a Bluetooth and a Wi-Fi, you would be speaking a different language because they were not around in the generation to have the speed of technology and change that you do. You see, I had the other personal experience of understanding possibility through a question I asked my son. You all have seen this before. What do you want to be when you grow up? I think this gives us the realm of possibility to whatever you answer. My son was around 6 or 7, and I asked him, hey, son, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, you know what, Dad? I think I want to be an architect. I said, that's my boy. Outstanding. I'm going to go to the store, start getting him some graphing paper. Hey, maybe I can sign him up for Citizens, Maximilian. We can start working on Legos. This is going to be great. He's going to be able to build things. Now, my mind is already racing. He's already now a civil engineer, and he goes, well, maybe I want to become a Tyrannosaurus Rex. What? Wait. So you're going to grow up to become a prehistoric animal? Come on, pause. Brother, you're going to grow up to be all carnivorous. Listen, man, you eat enough as it is. I'm not sure I can afford to raise a dinosaur. You see, I had to step away from that conversation thinking, man, this guy is not going to make it in the world. But really, instead of me thinking he wasn't going to make it, I had to change my perspective on what he said. You see, as a child, you are still connected to the truth of infinite possibilities, and you are in direct lineage with your innocence. So the world is in front of you. Everything is waiting to be discovered, and there's nothing literally that you cannot do. What happens is over time, our experiences, our exposures, and the world tells us what we can or cannot be, what we should or should not do. We get influenced through news media, we get influenced through music, through television, through social media, and many other things, friends, family, and relationships. And all of these shape the reality of what we deem as possible. So knowing this, I didn't want to be the person to thwart his innocence and take away his dream of being whatever he wanted to, especially not at a young age, not his dad. So I figured out something different. I said, okay, son, if you really want to become a dinosaur, you don't even have to wait. And then we were able to do this. I was able to dress him as a dinosaur so that he could fulfill his dream of becoming whatever he wants. You see, the reality for us all is nature is a great example of the possible. Now, understanding, you don't have to know why it happens, but the fact that it does tells you that anything can happen. The Venus Flytrap, this is a carnivorous, flesh-eating plant. The firefly is a beetle that is capable of producing its own source of light and emitting that in a space of darkness to give light where there is none. The electric eel is a fish capable of producing up to 600 volts of electricity. The parrot is one form of bird that can learn words in every single language and recite them back to you. The solar eclipse happens when the moon comes between the earth and the sun and gives the appearance of nighttime in the middle of the day. The temperature drops, and in the instant that it's gone, it returns right back to the form that it was. You see, you don't have to understand why these things occur. You just have to know that they do to understand that the realm of possibility is something that we continue to live in. See, it's from understanding that anything is possible that we're able to do everything in our world. Since our existence, humans have said, hey, is it possible for us to run faster than horses? And then we birth the automobile. We say, hey, I see birds in the sky. Is it possible for us to soar like them? And then we get into flight. But not only flight, that took us into outer space. And if you remember when man went to the moon, the iconic phrase, it's one small step for a man, but one giant leap for mankind. And we continue to take one step forward, even right now, today. So people were coming back into the room, and my session was about to begin for the afternoon, and I was still vexed on the question, who invented impossible? But I opened up that afternoon session by saying, well, I believe I've got the answer. So you must understand that impossible is an adjective, not a noun. Therefore, it describes nouns, but it's not one. We know that nouns are people, places, and things. So you, me, us as humans, we're people. And nothing is impossible for us. Anything you want to do in your life, anything you have as a goal for yourself is absolutely possible. Second, we know that impossible is not a place. Therefore, any destination you want to go, any coast you want to see, any journey you want to take, any destination you want to set for yourself is absolutely possible for you. And finally, we know that impossible is not a thing. Now, come on, today, I'm going to bring that close. Impossible is nothing. So the only answer for the question that I could think of is simply this. Who invented impossible? You and me. And not only us, but anybody who's ever invented anything in our world. And anybody who ever will. So not only today, but every day of your existence, I simply invite you all to do one thing, and that's imagine a world where anything is possible. I mean really anything, anything that you could fathom in your mind, that it could become true in your reality. Because the reality of the world that we live in is that we're in a place where anything can, does, and will happen.